What is going on, guys? Welcome to this Python tutorial series number 2. So today I'm going to be talking about variables. All right, so let's start. So when you think about variables, you can think of this as a storage container, or in the physical world, we can think of this as a warehouse, even your hard disk. Okay. All right. So pretty much anything that stores something in it, you can think of that as a variable. But in variable, it stores data types in Python. So today I'm going to be talking about three types of data types in Python. Obviously, there's a lot of data types here in Python, but I'm not going to be talking about them in a much deeper sense here because they will be on the other video. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the integer, which is the whole number in Python, the float, which a number with decimal numbers, and lastly the string. This is the most common or the basic one. This can store like, or actually this can contain name, basically number without a value, Unicode, so etc. Right? Okay, so we're gonna be talking about now how to create a variable. How do we create these variables? So first things first, we need to there's things that we need to keep in mind first before we create a variable. For example, naming conventions. Okay, so in Python, there's basically, I think there's just three common naming conventions here. This is what we call snake case convention. Uh, there's also a Pascal case, and a camel case. Okay, so when we talk about snake case, we create variables that has a delimiter, which is an underscore. So you delimit your variable with an underscore. For example, we want to have your first name in a particular variable. So you call that, or you create a variable by doing like this. So first underscore name. So all of the words are in lowercase, but you have a delimiter which is an underscore. Okay. So as you can see here, we get error. We get an error here. Why do we have an error if we created a variable? So to store or to completely create a variable here, we need to actually add an equal sign to this. So as you can see, the red, basically the red underline has been removed here, which is nice. But here it's not, because we're not storing something here. So let's say we are going to store our first name. So to store our first name, we need a string. Okay. So a string, as I said in the first video, I think it has like a double quotation marks or a single quotation mark. So we're going to create a string, and inside of this, we're going to put our first name. So let's say Rave Works. So basically, this is your first name, okay, and you have it's stored in the first name variable. So which is nice. This works because this is a snake case convention. Let me remind you, conventions are not really a syntax. Okay, the syntax for Python naming variable is basically you cannot store a variable if you have like a space in your variable. So you cannot do this. Okay, all variables should be intact as one. Okay, so therefore we need to add an underscore after we create the first word and then the second word of the variable. So it will remain as one. Okay, so that is how you basically create a variable using a snake case convention. So you store what you want to store. Basically, this is a string, and it is equal, or basically it is this word Graveworks is inside the first name variable. So that is how it is. So the Pascal case, this is not actually common in naming variable. This is basically common for creating a class. Okay, we're not going to be talking about the class because this is for beginners. So I'm just saying that this is a common way to create uh, a name for your class. Okay, when we create Pascal case, it is basically delimited by uh, capitalization. So we need to capital every word, or yeah, every word in this case. So we have, for example, computer shop. So we need to basically delimit word by word with capital letter. Okay, so that is how you create Pascal case. But as I said, this is basically for class. Okay, so you don't do this in in variables. Okay, all right. So let me just comment that out and leave a space here. All right. So in camel case, you can actually use this as well. Um, basically alternative with for the first name or the snake case. So you can basically have first name. So it is delimited by the second capital letter. So you have first as basically the first letter of the first word is in lowercase, and the second word has a capital letter with N. So you have like first name, name, or like that. Okay? Okay, so we can store something here again. So rave works. All right. So we are going to be talking about the syntax now of a variable. All right. Basically, we cannot actually create a variable with a number first. So for example, 1, we have that. For example, that's not gonna work. This is not a variable, guys. So keep that in mind. You can never create a variable with a number in the first row. Even you put a word after the number, it cannot really be done. Okay, so you should basically just have a letter here and then put a number. So you can do that. You can put the letter first or the word first and then a number. Okay? So I like snake case. You're going to be seeing me create variables with snake case convention. So I'm just saying that this is my favorite. So yeah. All right. So that's one. You cannot put or you cannot start with a number with your variable or in creating a variable. All right. And then you cannot also create a variable with a built-in function inside Python. For example, we have sum is equal to 3. So as you can see here, there's underline here. And if we see the error, it says here shadows built-in name sum. So there's a built-in name in Python that is actually identical to this variable that we've created. So it's a bad habit. Don't ever do this, guys, because you're gonna be first of all you're gonna be confused of what you are doing. Is this a variable or is this a built-in function in Python? I don't know because this looks like identical to me. So it's really hard to pinpoint what is a variable and what is a built-in function if you are doing this kind of stuff. And also, uh, this will come a bit of problem when you are dealing with a large project now. For example, you are creating a definition uh, or of a variable, and you have a variable here as well. So that's gonna be a little it's gonna be a tricky part for you. Okay, so don't ever do that. Um, you cannot basically create a variable with the built-in function or built-in name function in Python. Okay? All right. So, that's just pretty much it in syntax. Oh, actually, I forgot something. You cannot add the space, okay, in between the variable. So I showed you that earlier. You cannot do this. So just keep that in mind, okay? All right, so we're gonna be talking about now about the basically the three types of data types. So we have the integer, float, and string. So to store an integer to a variable, let's say we want to basically store our age. All right, an age is basically a whole number. It has never been a float with a decimal number, right? So we have age is equal to, basically this is the variable, and we are storing what we are going to store. Basically, I'm, for example, 20 years old. Okay, so this 20 is basically an integer. This is an integer, guys. So if you want to know, or if you want to be uh, sure if this is actually an integer, I'm going to give you a bonus, and you can print the data type or the type of this variable that we are storing. So we have print, and you're just going to type, and then inside the open and close parentheses, you can put the variable that you want to check the data type in. So as you can see here, we have class int. So an integer is basically in Python, it's basically int. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can always know what the data type of what you are doing here. So you can just print and then type age. All right, so that is an integer. Now we are going to store, for example, your GPA. Okay, my GPA is, for example, 1.4, right? So this is basically a float already because it has a decimal number. Okay, so we're going to print again the type of the age and also type of the GPA. Okay, let's print that, and as you can see here, the second one, which is the GPA, is float. So that is how you create a float in Python. And lastly, this is a string. This is gonna be first name. So let's say Raveworks again. Okay. I have actually, there's additional syntax for a variable. You cannot actually create multiple variables with same name. Okay, so this is still going to work, but basically this will be the latter part, or the latter variable will be the one that will be read by the machine. So this is not actually a syntax. You can actually do this, but as you can see here, we stored a variable that is immutable. It means it cannot be changed because there's no process in this. So we just created a variable, and then the second one is a variable as well with the same name. So um, just be careful with this because the latter variable is the variable that will be read by the machine. So we can just change this to first name 1. So yeah, and then we're gonna print that type first name 1. Okay, so let's run this. Let's see what happens. So as you can see, this is str. So basically, if you create an str, this is equivalent to string. Okay, str is equal to string. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, so basically that's it, guys. there's just like a variable name where you can store something, and you can have like uh, a beautiful description for your data type, because data type looks boring, right? So you have like Raveworks, for example, here, Raveworks there. You can put this here, but if you have like a description or a beautiful variable for your data type, it would look much better, and you can basically track your code easily, right? Because this is first name, for example, this is Raveworks, and that is the first name, so that's much better. So that is how you use variables in Python, and you create a variable in Python. So that's pretty much it today, guys. So thank you very much for watching this, and see you guys in the next video.